Welcome everyone to MoonLore. Today we are talking about the Cancer full moon, which falls on, what date does that fall on, Jenny?
It's January 17th, 6:49 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Okay, and that's at 26 degrees of Cancer, is that right?
Yes, it's very close to 27. So yeah, it's right
Okay.
around there, 26, 27.
Okay. So before we get into, real specifics about this particular full moon, I want to talk, and I know I go over this every time. I want to kind of slow down and think about the cycles again, just to make sure that you all understand how the cycles, the lunar cycle works. This is a cycle that is a 28-day cycle as far as the short cycle goes that we're tracking. And it really is, these cycles are about the relationship between the sun and the moon. All the planets go through different cycles with all the other planets. But when we're talking about the new moon, the full moon, the lunar phases, we are talking about the relationship between the sun and the moon. And that relationship starts new every month, every approximately 28 days. And the cycle begins at the new moon when the sun and the moon are in the same position. From our perspective here on Earth, we can't see the moon at all because it is right there at the same position as the sun is. So when we're looking at the moon, we're looking at the sun, we don't see the moon. So at that point, the way we think about this is we correlate these cycles to a plant cycle. And we think about that new beginning, that new moon, as a time to plant a seed. So the cycle starts at that new moon. You plant a seed. You plant a seed in the area of your life where that new moon is occurring. The most recent new moon, the one that this full moon is attached to, was the Capricorn New Moon 2 weeks ago. So at that time, you would have made some sort of an intention, planted a seed in the area of your chart that holds Capricorn. Now we are 2 weeks later at the full moon. In between those 2 points, we have come to the first quarter moon, where you take action to support the growth of this seed. At this full moon, where we are at now, we see the results. In another week, we come to the third quarter moon, where the process, the cycle begins to shift and break down in order to prepare for the next full moon, the next new moon. So this is a cycle that is the same as the cycle of everything in our lives. Excuse that if you heard that siren going by. It's the cycle of everything in life. Things begin, things grow, things come to full illumination, and then they begin to break down and start over again. Now, Jenny, what do you want to add to this conversation about the cycle itself?
Well, I think you've done a great job of covering the basis and explaining it very clearly. The only thing that comes to mind is just that at the full moon, we're really at the midpoint of the cycle. So that's just something interesting way to think about it. So I think that's all I would add to what you just said. So nicely done.
Yeah. So if you think about, like I said, at the new moon, you can't see the moon at all because it is right there with the bright sun. At the full moon, it's exactly opposite the sun from our position. And that's why you can see the full disk of the moon, which is just the reflection of the sun on that surface of the moon.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing, that moon, and to really watch and learn how to work with these cycles is really a powerful thing to do. And I think, for anyone who is thinking about or starting to work with the cycles of the moon, I think one of the most important things I would encourage you to do is get outside and look at the moon. Look at it through all its phases. Watch how it, that new moon happens. We can't see the moon. A few days later, we see that tiny little crescent, and it grows a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger every day until it's the full moon. And then you watch it and it gets smaller and smaller every day and starts over. And, it's really a beautiful process to watch that.
Yeah, I think it's very powerful too to just look up in the sky because it's just such a tangible experience. And it's
Yeah.
so easy in our day to be fixated, be indoors and fixated on screens and so on and so forth. And we have a lot going on in our world right now. But just the simplicity of looking up in the sky can really provide a sense of anchoring and grounding. Just feel like, oh, okay, here's this moon that's been up there
Yeah.
for a long time, you know. So it really is a helpful
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And also, I want to add about the cycles that if you have a sensitive point that this is triggering, and this is true for any of our videos, you may be a person who's going to experience something more profound or more obvious or more impactful. Whereas, you know, some of us, this isn't necessarily hitting an exact point. So the point is just that some of these new moon and full moon cycles are going to hit you at different points in different ways, and other days you get a time off, and it's not hitting you so hard. But just keep that in mind as you listen to that. Also, great excuse to schedule a consultation to find out more about where this is actually hitting you. So I just wanted to add that
And
to
I
this.
guess, that made me think also, another thing I'd like to bring into this conversation is just that for every one of us, we were born at a particular cycle of the moon. And that's something that, people might know their sun, everybody knows their sun sign. Most of you watching this know where your moon is. Some of you know quite a bit about astrology and about where these placements are, but it's really significant to learn and know about the phase that you were born in. That's a whole nother big conversation, and we will do a video about it at some point. But I just wanted to throw that in there because it really, it's important. It's important to us.
Yeah, it is. And it also can help you identify what are the kind of power phases in your life, because the one that you're born at is can often represent as a sort of a mini power phase each month. So it's worthwhile to know where it is.
Yeah.
So
It
yeah,
really is.
cool.
Yeah. Okay. So from here, why don't we talk about Cancer? Because that's where this full moon is happening, is in Cancer.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, Cancer. Cancer is the sign of the crab. You know, which is a good thing to think of because the crab has that tough outer shell and then it's tender and buttery soft inside. And that's a pretty good description because Cancer's the sign of the mother. So those of us, you know, whatever your relationship was with your mother, you can probably think of some examples of feeling protected and also feeling the opposite of that, like this
Smothered.
yes, mothered, or exactly. Or when your mother, I just remember a time of my mother shouting at me thinking I was going to run into the road, and that fierceness of mother that, damn, you stop right in your tracks when something like that happens. So Cancer is both those things. It's fierce and it's loving. And it's, I don't know, two extremes. So
Cancer is such an interesting sign. It's a cardinal sign, which is the cardinal signs are the strongest beginning kind of energies of the zodiac. And so Cancer is a cardinal sign and it's a water sign. And one of the things, it's funny, I was talking to my Cancer sun sign daughter last night, and we ended up having a conversation about Cancer. And I find Cancer so interesting in our culture, which, I mean, I could go down a lot of rabbit holes here. But basically, what I want to say is that Cancer is extremely sensitive. It's ruled by the moon. It's very, very sensitive. And yet it is one of the strongest signs of the zodiac. And in our culture, we tend to equate sensitivity with weakness. And I can't tell you how many people I have worked with who really just don't understand their own strength in that sensitivity. But yeah, you think about the sensitivity of a mother who is going to protect her offspring at any cost, that fierceness that you mentioned, that, the mother bear. You're not going to mess with that kind of strength. There is no weakness there. And that's one of the things I really think is very important for people to understand about the sign of Cancer.
yeah. That's a really great point about just people thinking it means weakness, because I think there's a profound misunderstanding about the element of water in general, which Cancer being a water sign, this idea that water's somehow kind of just, I don't know, sort of fickle and not quite really solid enough. And like water is the most powerful element in a lot of ways. It's just that it's over time. Like the Grand Canyon was created by water and wind, but water over many, many millennia wearing away soil. And the power of that is just, it's very potent. But the other thing about water, which is also part of Cancer, is that no matter what you do, some part of water has an unconsciousness to it. It's, you're not going to be 100% totally aware and conscious of everything with water. There's always part of it that's tucked away, that's a little bit underwater. And that's part of working with it. So it can have a very instinctive side, which I think is what we're talking about when mom freaks out because her offspring are in danger, whether that's mother bear or another mom. But anyway, I think that's part of it too. So
yeah. Cancer's a fascinating sign, and there is that privacy about it. And I think, what you were saying to me, I think about that. What's underwater, what's hidden below the surface is that privacy. Cancer really holds a lot private. All the water signs do.
Yeah. So it is. And on the other hand, we've kind of described it well, but the thing about Cancer is Cancer can be moody and prickly. When you think about that crab with the shell, can be really oversensitive, because sometimes the world is just too much when you have that type of sensitivity. And anybody with a Cancer moon in your natal chart, I always think like you've got to have some alone, quiet time. Silence is going to be something, quiet and peace is going to be something you need somewhere to stay balanced, because it's just, otherwise the world is just too loud and too nuts. So.
And I think, the crab is such an apt symbol for Cancer, with like you said, that hard shell. You flip it over and it's got that soft underbelly. The other thing about the crab that's really interesting that I think about with Cancer is how it kind of approaches things sideways. There's a real approach from an angle that you really experience with the sign of Cancer as well. Okay.
Yeah. Interesting point. Yeah.
Cool.
So this moon, this full moon is Cancer. So this is going to bring in, I'll go ahead and share the chart here.
Let's bring that chart up.
This is going to bring in, even if you don't have any planets in Cancer, it's nonetheless going to hit somewhat of a sensitive place in your chart, because it has a connection with your moon. Your moon is your emotional content. So one way or the other, there is some potency to this for everybody.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. The first thing we see is right there.
Oh yeah. So it is at 27 degrees. Yeah.
Okay. You cannot miss the fact that with this full moon, we've got Pluto right in the midst of it. And what do we think of with Pluto? We think of power, empowerment, destruction. This is a very big statement. So this happens just after the conjunction of the sun to Pluto. Pluto has just barely moved across Pluto before it interacts with the moon. So it's bringing that statement of power with it.
Yeah, and as Laurie is pointing out to me, as you were pointing out ahead of time, well, the sun contacts Pluto every year, but what's a little bit different about this chart is that it doesn't always do it on the full moon. The full moon brings in an extra bright spot where the moon is also right opposed from Pluto. In fact, it opposed Pluto just a couple hours before this chart. So, it really brings that into the mix of the full moon, of something that's showing up is going to have to do with that empowerment and that intensity.
It's really showing us that the relationship between the sun and the moon is really showing us the relationship with Pluto at the same time. It's really highlighting that. And it's so interesting. I think what we're going to talk about now is the pathway that the moon has traveled since the new moon. So 2 weeks ago, at the new moon, the sun and the moon came together in an earlier degree of Capricorn.
Yeah, 12,
Right.
those 12 degrees.
So since then, what has the moon done?
It's been busy. The
It's
first
been
thing it
busy.
did, well, the very first thing it did was hit Venus retrograde.
Yes.
So that's the first step. If you haven't seen our Venus retrograde video, check that out for more information about that.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting, so at the new moon in Capricorn, we were thinking about concerns of integrity, because that's what Capricorn signifies, among other things, but that's a great keyword for it. And then right after that, it immediately smacked into Venus, which is bringing all of our values into question. And in retrograde, it means we're having to look under the hood. This is not just something bright and shiny. You got to like pop the hood and look at what's going on underneath.
Right.
So,
yeah. How is the integrity of your values? That is really so much the message of this Venus retrograde, is really understanding and looking at your own integrity around your values of love and money and resources and all of those Venus things. So yeah, the moon, the whole thing with the moon starting its cycle and then hitting into that Venus. And then after that, where did it go? Oh,
it just
then
kind of like a xylophone.
Yeah.
Then it hit Pluto, right?
Yep.
So hit that, and within just a couple days, we were looking it up. It then hit Mercury, which Mercury in this chart is retrograde. It was not retrograde when the moon hit it.
Right.
So just a comment. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then Saturn. So it really just went bing, 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 bing over all of those things very quickly.
Yeah, very quickly, within a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then it continued to swing around the whole chart. And the only planet it hasn't contacted since that new moon is Mars. Right. So if you want to think about the moon kind of like a sponge, it kind of soaked up the meaning from all of these planets and these signs. And at the full moon, you're kind of seeing this expression of what was going on. I don't know. I kind of think behind the scenes of Pluto in there, like tucked away, the things that are hidden from view. Pluto brings in significations of things being buried or hidden. I think, anyway, there's a lot.
And you think about it. If you think about this, that new moon was on January 2nd, 2022. The full moon is here on January 17th, 2022. The sun and Pluto come together. If you think about the full cycle, and what have we been listening to on the news? Well, we're exactly a year out from the January 6th insurrection. I don't want to bring politics in any particular way, but I do want to say that Pluto Sun conjunction, which is the beginning of a 1-year cycle of empowerment, destruction, however that works. So that story that began last year, that's between the time of the new moon and those days, as it's been picking up and coming to here, everything I hear on the news is about that. It's bringing us back to those thoughts. And now at this full moon, what are we seeing? What is going to be illuminated?
Yeah. And certainly like the committee investigating all those things. I mean, there's like more and more things happening. And what I think is interesting about Pluto, and I think I got this from the Astrology podcast, but is that Pluto has the power to conceal and it has the power to reveal.
Right.
So it's kind of that doorway. It's kind of the gateway in a sense of what's coming to light. So I think we're seeing some things coming to light. Right. And I also think there's probably a lot going on behind the scenes that we are not privy to at this point. Right. And then, I'll stop there.
Yeah, but it is fascinating just to see how this comes up, with this being what is being discussed and talked about and revealed and hidden in the culture. Pluto is one of those, those outer planets that really is about the generational issues and big cultural shifts and changes. It's been so active in this whole period of time. Pluto's been extremely active in a lot of what's been going on in our world, in our culture and government and all of that.
Yeah.
So this is a time where I think we might see some stuff, and some stuff will be hidden away.
Yeah.
It doesn't really take astrology to know that, but this really highlights it for sure.
Yeah. So some things will come to light in the future. But from an astrology point of view too, the interesting thing about this chart for the Cancer full moon is how you'll notice that the moon is just kind of opposite from everything else. Like the chart's weighted so that the moon's kind of by itself. So we were talking about that, and that perhaps presenting as a bit of a vulnerability, the moon kind of hanging out by itself, like what is being shown. But also it's really a mirror. It's because it's so opposite from the other things. It's kind of like a mirror reflection. It's holding all of those meanings that we just talked about and reflecting it back to us. And then the other thing, so we've talked about Pluto. The other thing that this moon does is it trines Neptune. So that's nice. We like that. And it sextiles the sun. So that kind of suggests a softness or some other energy coming in to, maybe some compassion, some empathy, those kinds of things coming in to help balance some of the harshness.
Right. Or some delusion.
Well, it's that too. Yeah.
I mean, it does give us a softer place to land.
Yeah.
And when we were looking at it before we started the video, we were talking about just this image of a seesaw or a teeter-totter, whatever they call them now, in a playground, and just thinking about this little vulnerable, it's strong, Cancer is strong, but it's also vulnerable, that vulnerable Cancer being up on the seesaw, and Pluto, all that power and all that strength holding it down. So the moon is up there feeling very vulnerable and kind of scared, but then Neptune is like, it's okay, I've got you. And I'm going to bring compassion to the whole story, not just to the vulnerability of the Cancer moon, but also to the deep, hard struggle of that Pluto with the sun.
And I mean, I liked what you said too in the beginning before when we met, and you were saying, well, the moon's up there at the top of the seesaw going, wait a minute, the sky's beautiful. And, maybe I'll just write a poem while I'm up here. Forget about the bully.
Right. Yeah, that's how we were thinking about it, as this is the bully, Pluto being the bully, holding the sun down there. But like, yeah, I'll write a poem, and that poem will soften the edges. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm really happy to see Neptune tied in there. It does definitely give us an out. Is it clarity? No. What we see, the clarity piece is we see the bully and we see the vulnerability. What's behind the scenes, or it's not clear because it's Neptune, but from that softer place, there is a support and an opportunity.
Yeah, see, I kind of almost get like a statement of like, hey, you know what? Life is just messy. And even the thing to do is to not go, oh God, everything's terrible or everything's great. Reality is that we got a big mix of things going on. We've got a lot of
really do
intensity and scary things, but we also, there's a necessity for change too right now. So you can't we just have to take the whole thing and recognize there's a messiness. And I kind of feel like that Neptune speaking to that, because Neptune is not about organization or, as you said, clarity, or it's just sort of like, hey, it's messy. So
messy, write a poem.
I mean, I see you circled the retrograde. Yeah, that's the other piece that we need to talk about. So yeah.
Both Mercury and Venus being retrograde at the same time in the middle of all of this is really interesting to me, because I just think, when a planet is retrograde, one of these inner personal planets is retrograde, it really talks to the necessity for us to go in a different direction to understand that energy. You know, yes, go back and listen to the video we did about Venus retrograde, the necessity for all of us to be really re-engaged with an understanding of our own values, really reassessing the integrity of our values.
Mhm.
And at the same time, with Mercury being retrograde, we have to be reassessing how we think. It's not just our values, it's how we think and how we talk and what we say. That Mercury right there together with Saturn. How are you speaking? How are you thinking? And, you know, and also with both of these, when they're retrograde, it's, you know, having I don't know if I'm using the right word here, but the courage or the impetus to allow your values and your thinking and your communication to move in a different direction than what is expected.
Nice, Lori. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was thinking too, as I'm looking at this chart and you see all those things together. I mean, you see Venus, you see Pluto, you see the Sun, Mercury, and Saturn. They're fairly smushed together on the one side of the chart, and the moon is just exactly opposite of that. So I do see the moon is a mirror. And what is it mirroring? Well, it's mirroring this whole cluster of things that are all ruled by Saturn, because Saturn rules Aquarius and
Right.
Capricorn.
Yes.
So really what you're looking at is, well, what's Saturn trying to say? Well, Saturn is in the humanitarian sign of Aquarius. It's asking us to do the really difficult inner work of looking within and questioning the way you communicate, questioning your value system, questioning the powers that be that, you know, that are in place right now.
And what you think.
Yeah, and taking all of that in, and the moon's kind of just showing you this reflection. And what is it showing a reflection with? With this kind of loving sensitivity of Cancer. So there's, I mean, that's kind of the picture of the chart in like a, you know, a few sentences. So it's just quite a,
Yeah,
I like
that's
this chart
really,
more and more.
yeah, it's really quite dynamic, and it really is speaking to, can you allow yourself to change your mind about something? You know, big things. Can you allow yourself to reinvent your values? You know, I think having both of these retrograde at the same time really puts us in a position. What do we value? How are we thinking? And do we need to change those?
Yeah. Yeah, I think this chart in a lot of ways just invites you to try to take in another point of view, because that's really what a polarity is, right? At the end of the day, it really is just, you know, take a moment and see if you can walk in the shoes of others. So yeah.
I like this chart more and more the more we look at it and the more we talk about it and think about it. It's a very, very powerful chart.
Yeah. So think about that seed of integrity you planted a couple weeks ago, and then we will, do you want to talk about the houses this falls in?
Yeah, let's stop this share. We don't need to be sharing that while we do this, I don't think.
Okay.
And let's think about, the personal impact. If you have Aries rising, this full moon's going to be falling in your 4th house, which tells us that you planted your seed in the 10th. So the seed that you planted was something around integrity, around career. And now at this full moon, you are able to see, you know, there's some clarity around how that seed that you planted is now showing up in your ability or need or desire to protect home and family.
Nice.
Yeah.
So this is, you know, directing your loving care and attention into your home life. I mean, that can be your physical home or the emotional bonds that tie you together with your family. So yeah.
Right.
Neat. So okay, so let's see, Taurus. So if this full moon, if you have Taurus rising, this full moon falls into your 3rd house of communication. So this is an extra good time to just be careful about how you communicate, just offering loving sensitivity through your communications. And I also think with the 3rd house, this is your day-to-day stuff. This is your neighbors you pass by on your way to work, the person who's operating the cash register at the store, acquaintances. And so it's just this bringing that nice vibe to people you don't even really know necessarily, and your siblings.
Right.
And it means that you planted your seed of integrity around the gaining of wisdom up there in the ninth house. So
Huh.
this is an extension of that wisdom as you're extending it to these your neighbors, basically.
Yeah, wisdom and your worldview. Yeah, that bigger understanding of the world. That's where you planted the seed. That's great, Jenny. Okay, so if you have Gemini rising, this is falling in your second house. So this is really illuminating your, how you use your personal resources, how you use money to nurture and protect, sort of self-care. It's how you're using your resources to care for yourself and others. And this, so you would have planted the seed in the eighth house of other people's values. So it would have been a seed that you planted to understanding and being in integrity in how you navigate other people's boundaries, now reflecting in how you're supporting your own.
Nice. Nicely said. Fabulous.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's good. So if you have Cancer rising, like me,
Oh, yeah.
I think this is a time to bathe in a warm bath of self-love.
Oh,
I mean, this is a time to just think about what do you at your core self, what do you need to feel nurtured in this difficult time? I mean, really thinking that, and recognizing like how hard that actually is. Like it's not actually a selfish path at all. It's when you do that, you create you're being more of a resource for other people. So if you're taking care of yourself, then with Cancer rising, you're definitely offering a benefit to those closest to you too, your intimate one-on-one partnerships or the people that you have those types of partnerships with. It could
right.
be colleagues and things like that too.
Yeah.
But,
Absolutely. And it reflects back to 2 weeks ago when the seed you planted was around integrity in your partnerships.
yep.
So that integrity you planted in your partnerships, now you get to sit back and say, well, okay, so how has that grown into my own self-protection, self-care?
Yeah.
That's
Nice.
lovely. Lovely. Okay, so if you've got Leo rising, this is falling in your 12th house. This highlights, really, the way I was thinking about it was it's highlighting deep emotional issues that are hidden from view.
Mm.
So that's what you're seeing. If you planted a seed 2 weeks ago in the sixth house of just day-to-day routines, your routines of your life, and now that is bringing forth an understanding of what's kind of been hidden away. I feel
Mm.
like I'm not articulating that real well. What do you have, Jenny?
No, I think that was good. I mean, you're bringing up the idea that, yeah, it's kind of tucked away from view. Like this is emotional issues tucked away from view. I think that's a great way to put it. Um, I think that we always talk about in the 12th house, we're always thinking about the collective, the bigger picture than us, the things that are not very tangible. So there's always a little bit of a challenge thinking about it that way. So, but I think it is a connection, an emotional connection to the collective and the unconscious, the larger picture of humanity.
Yeah, the deeply emotional hidden issues, and those are connected to the collective. Yeah, we all kind of hold that together.
Yeah. And the seed
Awesome.
that was planted for integrity, I think, is around those practices, which are those can be your
Ah,
spiritual
yeah.
practices or your self-care, but ways that you take care of your health and also that you anchor yourself in the day-to-day life. And that connects you with this much bigger picture.
Oh, that's great. I
Yeah.
like that. Okay.
So, yeah. It's always tricky talking about 12 house.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you have Virgo rising, you have this full moon falling in your 11th house. And the 11th house is all about your cohorts and your allies and your sort of networks of groups of people. So this is about, if you have Virgo rising, you want to bring that loving sensitivity to those groups to really show up for your community. whether that's online or because not really might not be in person right now.
Right.
And that means that you planted the seed for integrity in your fifth house, which is the house of giving love. So this really is showing you a way
Oh,
it's
yeah.
coming full circle. You planted that seed for the giving of love, and now you're really offering up open-heartedly to your group, your community. So
Right,
yeah.
right. Huh. I said something about this illuminating your need for a community to support and protect you on your path.
Mm,
Just bringing in that, the Cancer, the need to be protected
mhm,
in some way, because the 11th is about receiving love more than, yeah, the giving is in the fifth house, the receiving.
mhm.
It's an interesting one to think
Yeah,
about.
well, it's a connection, right, between the giving and the receiving.
Right,
And
right,
they're actually kind of hard to separate out because as you open yourself up to your community, it's your way of showing love, although you're receiving. Yeah, it's a
right,
good thing to
right.
think about.
I love that polarity between the 5th and the 11th. It's just really a powerful place to have planets in those two houses as well in your natal chart. Okay, so with Libra rising, this Cancer full moon is falling in your 10th house. So it's really about noticing your ability to care for, protect and support and love people within the context of your community.
Mm,
So
mhm,
it's really highlighting how your community is supported by the seed you planted 2 weeks ago in your 4th house of home and family. So
mhm,
where is that link between the stability of the home and the emotional um, receptivity of your career?
mhm. Yeah, I just said bring donuts to work for that one.
And that's just perfect. I mean, if you've got Cancer in your 10th house, which you do, if you've got Scorpio rising, if you're using a whole sign
Libra,
system. Did I say that Libra? I'm sorry. If
that's
you've
right.
got Libra rising, so you've got Cancer in whole sign, you've got Cancer in that 10th house, and you probably are the person that brings donuts to work or cookies or in some way brings that nurturing energy to the workplace.
Yeah, nice.
Okay.
Let's see. So, if you have Scorpio rising, this is going to put that full moon in the ninth house, the ninth house of travel and teachers and publishing, like these kind of societal constructs. But anyway, I think this is a time to bring that loving sensitivity or show love and respect to your teachers, whether your teachers is actually a guru or
Ah,
whether it's traveling to other cultures and recognizing how much you've learned from that, even if you haven't been able to do that lately. So it really is about that kind of nurturing that aspect and that great learning that you have.
oh,
So,
that's great. That's
and then
great.
you planted for the integrity was in the third house of learning, of dealing with your kind of day-to-day communications. So now you're getting to see how that's kind of flowering into a higher, I guess, a higher level of thought. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wrote something about, it really reflecting the cultural sensitivities of others,
Hmm.
really bringing in an understanding of the cultural sensitivities of people around us. I mean, people are on very different pathways around their cultural understanding of the world.
Mm, you got that right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that. So if you've got Sagittarius rising, this is falling in your 8th house, and it's illuminating your ability to navigate the emotional beliefs and baggage of other people.
Mm,
This is a full moon where you're really aware of those differences between yourself and others. And it harkens back to 2 weeks ago where you planted a seed to develop integrity in your own beliefs and values. So now 2 weeks later, you really are seeing and understanding others.
mm, mhm. Yeah, it's occurring to me that with Sagittarius rising, that, yeah, that eighth house is a tough spot for you because it's always dealing with, there's a lot of emotions wrapped up in dealing with other people's stuff, baggage
Right.
and shadow crap.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And
interesting.
yeah, it's a good time, with those of you who have Sagittarius rising, having a full moon falling right in that eighth house. Always remember the importance of ritual and boundaries.
Mhm.
And that's something that I think you really drilled that piece into my head, Jenny, somewhere along the years, that importance in the eighth house of boundaries and ritual.
Mhm. Nice. Let's see. Well, with Capricorn, we're back at that. You're in the house of partnership, is where that full moon's going to fall. So this is, I
Mm,
don't know. I just think about offering that protective and loving sensitivity to your partner, and just to your partners in crime. And this is not just your significant other, but this is other people that are your partners in crime too, that you share some significant intimacy with too on an emotional level. And this comes from having planted a seed for integrity just with regards to yourself and that sense of self, and just doing that. And now you're come all the way to the other side to shine a light on that partnership of yours. So, yeah.
okay, so then if you've got Aquarius rising, this is falling in your sixth house. And so that's really, it's really highlighting your routines and your self-care, your healthcare routines, and really understanding how emotionally important those issues are to you. And yeah, there's just such a focus on self-care for you. What do you have to say about that? You need to bring in more on that, because I'm stuck.
Well, I also think, I mean, yes, six out the things that you just said, and these are self-care practices that you have in order to keep your health in a good
Okay,
place.
yeah.
So they're not frivolous, they're important structurally to the path of your life. But you planted that seed of integrity
In the
in the
12th.
12th house, which is all, again, the trickier one to talk about. So it's something about really being able to witness, or hold like the suffering of others, like recognizing that I don't know, just recognizing that we
Ah,
all are suffering. And as much as we
right,
all feel alone with it, it connects us all. So it's something about planting
right.
that seed there and being in an integrity with that. And then now making sure that you're taking really good care of your routines so that you're really taking care of
Yeah.
yourself on a profound level.
Yeah, those self-care routines that support you as you are part of that large collective of humans who suffer.
Yeah, pretty much.
We're all together in this,
Yeah,
and suffering is an important component,
yeah,
because without suffering, we cannot develop compassion for others.
yeah. It's just how it works.
It's just how it works, and we
Yeah,
all get there.
yeah.
Well, we don't all get to the compassion part, but we all get to the suffering part. And if we work our lives properly, we get to the compassion part as well.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank
And
you.
last but not least, we have Pisces rising. So with Pisces rising, this full moon is going to shine in that ever so sensitive fifth house of giving love. So this is, I think about showing your love and your kindness and giving other people through being playful, like through
Oh,
being to
yes.
share that, like the understanding we all have vulnerability and that it's okay, we can play. So you really, I think about bringing the energy of children, but also like kittens and puppies and things like that to this, where you're really just being playful. The other piece about the fifth house is taking risks. So
Yeah, yeah.
it is taking a risk of, I don't know, if you're really sort of stodgy, you might be like, I don't want to take a risk of appearing like immature or silly, but too bad, you should do that.
Yeah, and I mean, wherever Cancer is in your chart, which if you've got Pisces rising using whole sign houses, it's going to be in your fifth house.
Yeah.
There's such a sensitivity in that area. There's such a tenderness there. And, you know, the old time astrologers talked about the fifth house as children, love affairs, and creativity. It is, it's where we give of ourselves. And, you know, when we take risks, we're giving of ourselves to see where we land.
Yeah.
But it's a sensitive place.
Mhm.
And yeah, so the seed that was planted would have been in that 11th of community.
Yeah. So all of these things you're doing, it's like having an impact on the group as well, on the groups in your life, the community,
Right.
the other people that you're in any sort of group with. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I think that brings us all the way around. And I don't know if there's anything else we need to talk about here.
No, I think we covered it. I mean, just we know it's a pretty powerful full moon,
Yeah.
and especially if it's hitting a sensitive point for you. So
Yeah.
take advantage, just tune in, be aware, watch what crops up,
Yeah.
see how it's working for you. So
Yes, and if you're watching this on YouTube, please leave us a message, share this video, and yeah, like it, share it, subscribe to our channel, and we will talk to you very soon again. Anything else from you, Jenny?
no, thanks for watching. Thanks,
All
Lori.
right. Thank you, Jenny. Bye-bye.
Bye.